Imagine you're the leader of a European country. It's the winter of 2022, and your citizens are terrified. Not of war on their borders, though, that's happening too. They're terrified of freezing to death in their own homes. Because Russia just turned off the gas. For decades, Europe built its economy on cheap Russian natural gas. Entire industries, millions of homes, massive power plants, all running on pipelines from Siberia. Then, in a matter of weeks, Vladimir Putin weaponized energy. He didn't fire missiles at European cities. He just closed the valve. And suddenly, natural gas prices in Europe spiked 1,000%. Factories shut down. Energy bills became unaffordable. Governments scrambled to find alternatives. One valve. One decision. And the entire European economy teetered on the edge of collapse. That's the power of energy. It's not just about keeping the lights on or fueling your car. Energy is power. Literal power, the electricity in your walls. Economic power, the ability to manufacture goods and compete globally. And geopolitical power, the capacity to bend other nations to your will without firing a single shot. And right now, as we close out 2025, the geopolitics of energy is being completely rewritten. The old rules where oil and gas meant power are crumbling. New rules where solar panels, batteries, and rare earth minerals mean power are being written in real time. And the countries that understand this shift fastest will dominate the 21st century. So today, we're diving deep into the invisible war being fought over energy. Who's winning? Who's losing? And how technologies you've probably never heard of are reshaping global power dynamics in ways that will affect your life, whether you realize it or not. Let's talk about the geopolitics of energy. Because the future of power isn't what you think. For the past century, energy geopolitics was simple. Whoever controlled oil controlled the world. The Middle East had it. OPEC could manipulate prices by turning the production tap on or off. Countries went to war over it. America built its entire foreign policy around securing access to it. And nations with massive oil reserves, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela, wielded outsized geopolitical influence far beyond what their economies or militaries alone would justify. This was the world of hard power through energy. You didn't need to be rich or technologically advanced. You just needed to sit on top of massive oil reserves. Geological luck became geopolitical leverage. But something fundamental is changing. And it's happening way faster than most people realize. Despite decades of pledges to transition, fossil fuels still accounted for 86% of global energy supply in 2024. So we're not in a post-fossil fuel world yet. Not even close. But the direction is clear, and the geopolitical implications are enormous. Here's what most people misunderstand about the energy transition. They think it's primarily about climate change. Saving the planet, reducing emissions. And yes, that's part of it. But for major powers, the energy transition is about geopolitics. It's about not depending on other countries for your energy security. It's about controlling the technologies and supply chains of the future. It's about economic competitiveness in industries that will be worth trillions of dollars. Respondents to the KPMG 2024 Energy CEO Outlook ranked geopolitical complexities as the top challenge facing their companies at 55%, followed by economic uncertainty at 43%. Think about that. The CEOs running the world's biggest energy companies say geopolitics, not technology, not climate policy, not even economics is their number one challenge. That tells you everything about where we are. And here's the fascinating part. Geopolitical competition is spurring the clean energy transition, with countries competing on legislation and investment. Nations aren't transitioning to clean energy primarily because they care about polar bears. They're doing it because they see strategic advantage. The United States passed the Inflation Reduction Act, directing $369 billion into clean energy, focusing on expanding domestic manufacturing of critical technologies like electric vehicles and renewable energy components. That's not just climate policy. That's industrial policy. It's about ensuring America leads in the industries of the future. Europe is doing the same. China is doing the same. Everyone's racing to build domestic clean energy manufacturing capacity. Because they've learned the lesson from Russia's gas blackmail. Energy dependence is vulnerability. And nobody wants to be vulnerable. But here's where it gets really interesting and really problematic. The transition from fossil fuels to clean energy doesn't eliminate resource dependencies. It just shifts them. Instead of depending on oil and gas, we're now depending on lithium, cobalt, nickel, rare earths, copper, graphite, a whole suite of minerals that are absolutely essential for batteries, solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. And here's the kicker. These critical minerals are even more geographically concentrated than oil ever was. The IMF forecasts that under net zero scenarios projected to 2050, production of graphite, cobalt, vanadium and nickel falls short of demand, with a potential gap exceeding 2/3. Even metals like copper, lithium, and platinum face potential shortfalls of 30 to 40%. We're heading into a world where demand for critical minerals massively exceeds supply. And who controls the supply? Largely China. China doesn't just mine most of these minerals, though they do plenty of that. More importantly, China refines and processes them. Even minerals mined in Africa or South America often get shipped to China for processing. China controls somewhere between 60 to 90% of global processing capacity for most critical minerals. Think about what that means. The entire green energy transition, solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, runs through Chinese supply chains. If China wanted to, they could restrict exports of critical minerals or processed materials and cripple the clean energy industries of rival nations. And they've already done it. China's control over these supply chains means that it can threaten the United States and its allies with retaliatory export controls on gallium, germanium, graphite, and rare earths. In late 2023, China imposed export controls on gallium and germanium materials critical for semiconductors and military applications. It was a warning shot, a demonstration of leverage, and Western governments got the message loud and clear. So what's the response? Every major economy is now trying to build independent supply chains for critical minerals and clean energy technologies. It's called friendshoring, relocating supply chains away from geopolitical rivals and toward allies. But here's the problem. It's expensive. Really expensive. China spent decades building its dominance in critical mineral processing. They invested when nobody else cared. They accepted environmental costs that Western countries wouldn't tolerate. They subsidized industries until they achieved economies of scale that made competition nearly impossible. Now, Western countries are trying to build parallel supply chains from scratch. And it turns out that's hard. Geopolitical focus on energy security tends to prize domestically produced sources. But there are trade-offs because costs go up when you want to manufacture clean energy products at home rather than import them. The BP Energy Outlook found that energy costs could rise significantly in scenarios with greater geopolitical risk because countries want to use domestic resources and manufacture clean energy products at home. So you can have energy security, or you can have cheap energy. Increasingly, you can't have both. And this creates a dilemma for policymakers. Do you accept higher costs and slower deployment of clean energy in exchange for supply chain security? Or do you move faster on climate by accepting dependence on Chinese supply chains? There's no good answer. Which is why supply chain disruptions or export restrictions driven by geopolitical tensions could jeopardize global energy goals. Have you ever thought about who really runs the world? For a long time, the answer was simple. Whoever controlled the oil. But what if I told you that entire world order is about to be turned upside down? The future of global power isn't about oil, it's about technology. And this shift is happening faster than anyone realizes. Right now, the electric vehicle revolution runs on lithium-ion batteries. That means power for countries with lithium, cobalt, and nickel. But what happens when new tech comes along? Imagine sodium-ion batteries made from superabundant salt. Suddenly, the old resource maps are worthless. The same goes for energy. Over the last decade, solar and wind power costs have plummeted by 85% and 55%. Technology is rewriting the rules of the game, and a new race for dominance has begun. This race has three main players: the United States, Europe, and China. The US is still the king of breakthrough ideas, home to the research labs and universities that invent the future. But when it comes to actually building things, America often struggles. China, on the other hand, is a manufacturing powerhouse. They can take a new technology and scale it up at a speed that's simply unmatched, building massive factories and infrastructure almost overnight. Europe is caught in the middle, strong on engineering but lacking the raw innovative power of the US and the manufacturing muscle of China. And China is playing a very smart game. They're not just building for themselves. They're offering a new path to developing nations. Xi Jinping has made it clear. China's model shows you can build a modern economy by deploying existing technologies, not just by inventing new ones. This is a powerful message, and it has a form of soft power that is winning friends and influencing nations across the globe. But there's another, even bigger story flying under the radar. A massive explosion in electricity demand is coming. Everything is going electric: our cars, our homes, our industries. Add to that the colossal energy needs of AI and data centers, and you see the challenge. The countries that can generate huge amounts of cheap, reliable electricity will become the new economic superpowers. Manufacturing, AI development, everything will flock to where the power is. And here's the most exciting part. For the first time in history, most of our new electricity is coming from renewables. We're at a tipping point. Just this year, the world added a record amount of new renewable energy capacity. Countries with great sun and wind, many of them, in the developing world, suddenly have a natural advantage they never had in the age of fossil fuels. So if there are winners, who are the losers? The answer is clear: the petrostates. Countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and others whose entire economies and global influence are built on oil and gas exports, they're facing an existential crisis. Look at Russia. They tried to use their gas supply as a weapon against Europe. In the short term, it caused pain. But in the long run, it just pushed Europe to accelerate its switch to renewables and find other suppliers. Russia lost its best customers forever. Now it's turning to China, but that just swaps one dependency for another. Saudi Arabia sees the writing on the wall. Their whole Vision 2030 plan is a desperate attempt to diversify away from oil. But changing an entire economy built on a single resource is incredibly difficult. These petrostates won't go down without a fight, but the tide is turning against them. The era of oil power is in its twilight. So who wins in this new energy world? First, countries with abundant sun and wind, like China, India, and large parts of Latin America and Africa. Second, those who control the critical minerals for batteries and turbines, like Australia and nations in Latin America and Africa. The big question is whether they can process these resources themselves, or if China will continue to dominate the supply chain. Third, the tech innovators in the US and Europe who can sell their advanced clean energy designs to the world. And finally, the builders. The ones who construct the charging networks, the smart grids, and the energy storage systems of tomorrow. China is playing this masterfully. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, it's not just building clean energy projects at home. It's building them all over the world. It's creating a web of influence built on technology, finance, and infrastructure. It's soft power through solar panels and wind turbines. A new world order is being built, not with armies and oil rigs, but with electrons and innovations. The great energy transition isn't just about the climate. It's about the future of power itself. Here's the nightmare scenario that keeps energy experts up at night: fragmentation. What if, instead of a single global energy market, we end up with competing blocks? A Western energy system based on French-shored supply chains, and a Chinese-led system built on Belt and Road countries with very little connection between them. This is the biggest risk we face. Geopolitical rivalries could fragment global supply chains and completely undermine cooperation, especially as nations start prioritizing self-sufficiency over teamwork. Fragmentation would make everything more expensive. It would slow down the energy transition. It would mean building duplicate infrastructure and wasting incredible amounts of resources. And it would only deepen the geopolitical divides we already see today, but it might be exactly where we're heading. Because once you start building parallel supply chains for national security reasons, it's really hard to stop. The logic of competition often overrides the logic of cooperation, even when cooperation would benefit absolutely everyone. So what does all this mean for you, for regular people? First, get ready for volatile energy prices. As the old system breaks down and a new one gets built, we can expect disruptions, price spikes, and a whole lot of uncertainty. Governments will try to shield us, but no one can fully control global energy markets. Second, where you live is going to matter more than it used to. Countries that secure cheap, abundant energy will have major economic advantages. Jobs, industries, and prosperity will naturally flow toward these energy-rich regions. Energy poverty will become an even bigger problem for those left behind. Third, the products you buy will be shaped by geopolitics. Whether your electric car has Chinese batteries or American ones, whether your solar panels come from Asia or Europe, these aren't just simple consumer choices anymore. They're geopolitical outcomes, the result of trade policies, supply chain decisions, and national industrial strategies. And fourth, energy will remain a source of conflict. As long as countries depend on specific resources controlled by others, there's leverage. And where there's leverage, there's always the potential for coercion and conflict. The energy transition doesn't end geopolitics. It just creates a new set of winners and losers. So here's where we stand. The global energy system is being transformed, moving away from oil and gas to one based on electricity, batteries, and renewables. This shift is fundamentally reshaping global power. The old energy order, where geological luck gave some countries outsized power, is fading. The new energy order, where technology, manufacturing capacity, and control of critical minerals determine power, is now emerging. And the transition between these two worlds is messy, competitive, and geopolitically charged. China has positioned itself brilliantly for this transition. They control critical mineral supply chains. They dominate clean energy manufacturing. They're deploying renewable energy faster than anyone. And they're using energy technology and financing as tools of geopolitical influence all across the developing world. But China's position isn't unassailable. New technology can shift which resources are important. Western countries are now scrambling to build alternative supply chains, even if they're more expensive. And China has its own vulnerabilities, like its dependence on energy imports and an aging population. The United States and Europe are trying to catch up. They're making massive investments in domestic manufacturing, creating friendshoring initiatives, and pushing for technological innovation. But they're playing catch-up in a game China has been mastering for years, and that's a tough position to be in. Then there are the wildcards. Will breakthrough technologies like better batteries, fusion energy, or next-generation solar completely reshape the playing field? Will the realities of climate change force countries to cooperate faster? Or will geopolitical tensions escalate into outright conflict? Honestly, nobody knows. We are in uncharted territory. What we do know is this: based on today's policies, the demand for all three fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, is projected to peak by the end of this decade. We are at peak fossil fuels. From here, the path is toward an increasingly electric, renewable-powered world. But the path we take to get there matters immensely. A cooperative transition would be faster, cheaper, and more equitable. A fragmented, competitive transition would be slower, more expensive, and would deepen global divides. IRENA's 1.5-degree scenario shows that by 2050, over 90% of our electricity must come from renewables. That's the destination. But getting there while managing all this competition is the real challenge. Here's the uncomfortable truth: the energy transition isn't primarily about climate anymore. It's about power. Economic power. Geopolitical power. The power to shape the 21st century. And countries and businesses understand this. That's why energy has become the central arena for great power competition. The next decade will determine who wins and who loses in this new energy order. And those outcomes will shape everything from which countries prosper to whether we can successfully address climate change. So what do you think? Are we heading for a cooperative transition or a fragmented one? Will technology save the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This isn't just some abstract debate. It's about the future we're all going to live in. If this deep dive opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button. The energy transition is the defining story of our time, and most people have no idea how much it's about to change everything. Thanks for watching.